What's up, Star Wars nerds, and welcome to another episode of Brett on Fett. On today's episode, it's another segment of Droid Service where I'll be reviewing the brand new Jumbo Triple Zero figure from Gentlegiant and the brand new D3-09 figure from Disney's Droid Factory, Chandrila Star Line. Plus, I got some other droids pickups to share, so let's get to it. Welcome back to the channel. This is episode 65 of Brett on Fett, and for today's episode, we will have another segment of Droid Service where it's all about droids and droid figures. And for today's segment, I'm going to start off by reviewing a brand new jumbo figure. If you follow my channel, you know I do like the jumbo figures and pick them up every now and then. And I'm also a big fan of doctoraphra and her murder droids, Triple Zero and BT-1. And so a while back, Gentlegiant announced pre-orders for a Triple Zero figure in their jumbo line. So I had to jump on it. And he showed up a bit early. I was expecting him to show up in around August based on Entertainment Earth's ETA. But he showed up a little early. And so I can't wait to show you guys Triple Zero. So let's take a look. And here he is, the latest jumbo figure from Gentlegiant, Triple Zero. He's of course one of two droids owned by doctoraphra from the Darth Vader and doctoraphra comic books. And I tend to like my Star Wars when it gets a bit dark, and it doesn't get much darker than a protocol droid that tortures, maims, and murders people. This guy is pretty twisted. And I think Gentlegiant knocked it out of the park with this figure. Now, the Gentlegiant jumbo figures always use a vintage Kenner style mold. So this is a vintage Kenner interpretation of Triple Zero, so it's not going to be completely accurate to the images of him in the comic books. But my first impression with this figure is that it's very interesting to see such an evil, violent character portrayed in this vintage Kenner style, because I guess I think of vintage Kenner as kind of an innocent toy line, family friendly, even with the bad guys. And so I just think it's a lot of fun to have that combination manifested in this figure. Now, before we take a closer look, I do want to apologize. There's going to be a lot of glare. This thing comes in a clamshell. I will not be breaking the seals and removing everything. And so it's going to be a lot of reflection, but we'll do the best we can. All right, so let's take a closer look at this card back. And first off, I love the choice of red for the name pill. That was clearly done to match his red glowing eyes. And they've spelled out Triple Zero. That's exactly what Kenner would have done. Did the same thing with R2-D2, C-3PO, etc. And what an image. I love this image they chose for the card back with his knives out. And there you got the Gentlegiant logo there on the bottom. But yeah, just a really, really cool image there. So let's take a look at the figure. Of course, it's got the red in the background for the figure pill. And I just love this face sculpt with the glowing red eyes. Again, it's that vintage Kenner, nostalgic look we're all familiar with, but with those evil glowing red eyes thrown in there, just makes it so interesting. On the body, you can see they've thrown in some scrapes for his paint to show that he has been through some action. And let's take a look at my second favorite part about this figure, his hands. They have put him in full-on torture mode with knives out. It's pretty cool. It's not exactly accurate to the comics, but they've got the saw blade on there. And that's good enough for me because, again, this is supposed to be like a vintage Kenner figure. And a vintage Kenner figure wouldn't have gone to that level of detail for showing, different kinds of knives and syringes and everything. That would just been way too hard. So I am totally fine with how they did the hands, and it really sets this figure apart from a standard vintage Kenner style protocol droid, having those evil, Freddy Krueger like hands. So let's go ahead and take a look at the back of the card, and once again they've chosen another great image of Triple Zero to use on the back of the card back. Sorry about all the reflection there. Hello. Yeah, just a lot of glare, but yeah, it's a great image there, again with his knives out. And there is a description of Triple Zero, if you want to pause and read that. And then below that is the rest of the more recent jumbo figures Gentle Giant has put out. And there's some good ones there. I've got a few myself. So yeah, I'm just really happy with the art used for this card back front and back. It really captures that dark feel for Triple Zero, and having this really makes me wish Hasbro would put out a separate standalone carded figure for Triple Zero. Of course, we got him in that doctoraphra special action figure set along with Aphra and BT1, but just having him on his own special vintage style card back for TVC would just be so cool. And then of course I would want them to do the same thing for BT1. I mean, we've got a separate carded Aphra, so why not go ahead and give us the two droids on their own card back as well. But as far as this Jumbo Triple Zero action figure goes, I absolutely love it. I think Gentle Giant nailed it. I love everything about the figure and the art for the card back. And it's just one of the cooler Jumbo figure releases Gentle Giant has produced. And of course, since they did such a great job with this one, now they're gonna have to make a BT1 Jumbo figure, which I will definitely buy. Alright, up next, you may recall that I recently got back from the grader my SK620 astromech droid from Disney's Chandrila Star Line, part of their Droid Factory series. This is the one that was exclusive to the gift shop for that cruise attraction, which of course Disney recently announced that they are permanently shutting down in September. Well, recently it came out that Disney produced a second droid figure for that exclusive gift shop, and it is called D3-09. And as soon as that figure was available for sale at that exclusive gift shop, it did not take long to start showing up on eBay and selling for some really high prices. We're talking upwards between $150 and $250 on average is what I was seeing. So I did end up getting my hands on one for a pretty good deal, and I'll explain the circumstances in a minute. But let's check out D3-09. Alright, so before we look at D3-09, just a reminder, here is that SK620 astromech droid, the original Chandrila Star Line droid that I just got back from the grader from CAS a few weeks ago. Let's put him off to the side. And here is D3-09. Now I mentioned earlier I got a pretty good deal for this, and it started off I actually won an auction for him for around $130, which, believe it or not, was on the cheaper side from what I've seen. But the images from what I ordered was flawless. It was in mint condition. But when it arrived, the box it came in looked like this. It was just completely crushed, and I was so worried that this thing was destroyed. But it ended up not being that bad, but it did take a bunch of edge wear and some scrapes. And so I sent some photos of the damage to the seller and told him what happened. And after some discussion, the seller did agree to refund me more than half of what I paid. So I basically ended up getting this for about $60, which to me is not bad for a figure that is that exclusive and is going to be very rare considering Disney is shutting down that attraction soon. Now, of course, if Disney were to decide to go ahead and sell this figure on Shop Disney since they're closing down that attraction, then yeah, I'll probably regret that I paid $60 for this figure. But on the other hand, it's worth it to me to be able to get it this quickly, to be able to show you guys what it looks like on my channel. Alright, so let's take a closer look at the card back. Now, I do like the packaging for these two Chandrila Star Line figures they've put out. It's way better than the standard Droid Factory packaging. And I do like the image of the droid used here. I like the colors of this droid with that gold and silvery white and purple, blue. I think that looks pretty good. But unfortunately, when I take a closer look at the figure itself, I do feel like it's cheaply made. It just seems like kind of cheap plastic. Something about the mold. The paint apps are fine. It's just something with this plastic they used that just gives off real cheap vibes. I don't like the swivel, 5 POA style hips, although it does have hinges at the knees and at the ankles, so that's fine. The lower legs are fine, but I just think that 5POA style swivel hips on a brand new mold figure just does not work for me. There's a look at his hands on the side. Again, these paint apps are not bad. I kind of like them. I like that bronzy gold look. It's just something about the way this thing was molded. It just feels cheap to me, almost like it would belong in retro collection, even though I know it's not really a vintage Kenner style droid. Now the midsection there does have some nice detail going on, so that's a plus. But just overall, this thing just screams cheaply made. This would not pass for a vintage collection figure and really comes across as more of a novelty product that Disney just threw together to have another figure in their gift shop. So let's go ahead and take a look at the back of the card. You can see it's pretty standard for droid factories, but just in a different color scheme. You can see I've got another scrape there from that box getting damaged. And there's a description of D3-09 on the back if you want to pause and read that whole thing. And then below that is, as they typically do with these droid factories, they have kind of a schematic view where they call out the different parts of the droid, which I like a lot actually. And there's a $14.99 price tag and some more scrapes from that damaged package. Alright, so overall, I think D3-09 presents well as a carded figure. It looks really good next to SK620. But the figure itself misses the mark. It just looks too cheap to me. And so if you just want to get your hands on at least one of these two figures, definitely go for the SK620. It's just overall a way better product, and it's going to be easier to get and less expensive. So I highly recommend just getting SK620. But if you're like me and you just have to complete the set, then try to be a little more patient than I was. Hopefully these eBay prices will calm down. There'll probably be some more entered in the market because the attraction isn't closing until September. So you've got at least a few more months of this thing being sold at the gift shop, more people picking it up, more people selling it. And you never know, Disney may decide to sell D3-09 or both of these figures on Shop Disney once the Chandrila Star Line cruise attraction closes in September. And then you could just get it at retail price, presumably at $14.99. And finally, for today's episode, I do have a few droid pickups I wanted to share with you guys. One is a little astromech droid I've been eyeing on Tongori's website for a while and finally pulled the trigger on. And the other two are from the Droid Factory from a 2-pack that I previously had never seen before. And they're pretty cool, so let's check them out. Alright, so first up, I picked up this Droid Factory 2-pack from The Last Jedi. Now this is one I did not know existed. I have never seen this before. Now I'm not a completionist for Droid Factory figures. I pretty much just pick up the ones I really like. And so it's not a surprise that I didn't know this existed. Plus it's Last Jedi and I tend to stay away from Last Jedi stuff because it's just one of my least favorite Star Wars films along with Rise of Skywalker. But when it comes to droids, there's no bias there because a droid is a droid, and if it's cool, I don't care what film it comes from. And so I was excited to pick up these two guys. This is R4X2 and Y5X2, and I guess they're the X2 brothers because they are both the same color of green, pretty much the same exact color scheme. I didn't have any droids that were green, so I thought this would be pretty cool to own. And I did pick it up with the intention of opening these since the card back is not in the best of shape. So now that you've seen the packaging front and back, let's go ahead and get these droids open. Alright, so we'll take a close look at R4X2 first, and he's got that cone type of head. I really like that design. And the designs on the head look very nice. I like the paint apps. I like the little eye scope pieces that are painted that metallic color. So that looks really good. And I also love the paint apps on the body. Now this is a standard astromech body, standard articulation at the ankles, and then the static third leg. And so yeah, pretty typical stuff, but they just did a really good job with the paint apps on this guy. And next, let's take a look at his X2 brother. This is Y5X2. And he has a great looking head as well. Again, the colors really pop with this guy. And I love the black and silver collar area that goes all the way around. That's pretty cool. And just, man, I just really like the colors on the head. Now the body, unfortunately, is the exact same mold and paint apps as the other droid. And that makes sense that they'd reuse it, but it's just a little bit disappointing when you put the two droids together as a 2-pack that they have the same exact body and it's just 2 different heads and that's it. So I thought that was a little gratuitous. They probably should have split these guys up into 2 different sets. But that being said, very glad to add these 2 to my collection of droids, and I just really love the green. Can't wait till St. Patty's Day rolls around. Next up is a Tungori pickup. This is R2L3 from the Legacy Collection Build-A-Droid series. I like to refer to this guy as the basketball droid because of the color scheme. He just reminds me of a basketball. So let's take a closer look at R2L3, and unfortunately I do have a little scratch on the dome there, and that is one downside to ordering figures from Tungori. You can get some great deals on some discontinued figures, but every now and then they do have a minor defect. So mine has a scratch, but I love the color of this droid. It's kind of a rust orange, I'd call it. And the head, of course, pops off because this is a Build-A-Droid, so you see the little parts inside. But I love the patterns on the dome, and just all the paint apps around this guy are really great. There's just a lot going on. He's very busy, but it's still very cool. Standard articulation, again, with the astromech body. But just a really neat droid as far as all the paint apps and patterns that are on this guy. And I really love the Build-A-Droid exclusive figures because they always came up with some unique designs for those droids, and R2L3 is no exception. And finally, it's fitting that I just got my Jumbo Triple Zero figure in because I had also just recently gotten the Vintage Collection Triple Zero from Tungori, but unfortunately he showed up with no faceplate. That's right, he's missing the faceplate. Now this uses the exact same mold as that TVC C3PO, and you can see he's got the little thigh plate that comes off. This one's a little bit on the loose side, but yeah, just really disappointed he showed up with no faceplate. So I took my son's loose TVC C3PO and just popped off his faceplate, popped it on Triple Zero just to see how that would look and serve as a temporary plate, and it actually comes off pretty creepy. If you follow me on Instagram, you probably saw I posted this photo doing that to this figure, and I just thought it looked kind of funny. And so I'm keeping it on there for now. I did email Tungori about the missing faceplate, and they said they would replace it on my next order. So they obviously didn't want to just send me a tiny faceplate halfway across the world from China, which is fine and understandable. So hopefully the Triple Zero face will show up someday. If not, I may have to take a shot at my first custom by painting this 3PO face. Alright, so that's going to do it for this episode of Brett on Fett. I hope you enjoyed this segment of Droid Service. Thanks so much for checking out the video. Thank you to my subscribers. Don't forget you can also follow me on Instagram and on Twitter. Take care, and we'll see you next time.